Never gotten bark like this on a pellet grill? Let me show you how it's done. Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist Barbecue. I'm Jeremy Yoder. Today we are cooking brisket, the king of barbecue, on the pellet grill. I'm going to show you everything I know about how to make this the very best it possibly can be. Now your pellet grill might be a little bit different, but the principles still apply. So for instance, we want smoky smoke at the beginning because that's when it's going to be the most helpful. And so whether you have this pellet grill or a different one, that principle applies. I'm going to teach you everything I know to make the best food possible on your pellet grill. The first step in cooking the perfect brisket on your pellet grill is selecting a brisket. And in the United States, there are 3 meat grades that are commonly found. You have select, which is the lowest, which means the least marbling, the least amount of fat. Then choice, with more marbling. And then prime, with even more marbling. And for low and slow barbecue, I think you're going to get your best results with prime. You can get great results with choice. I've even had people who've made select briskets that were phenomenal. But really, for your benefit, I would recommend prime. Buy the best quality meat that you can comfortably afford. Now, if that's a Wagyu hybrid, that's fine. But for my money, I'm going with prime, and I would recommend that you try prime to get the results that you want without breaking the bank. Now it's time to trim the brisket. And so what I'm gonna do is refer you to a video I did with Cooper from Bar A Barbecue where he goes over his trimming process. He is literally a professional and does tons of them. And that's what I'd recommend for everybody who's trimming a brisket. It's gonna take a long time to do in this video. So if you want an in-depth breakdown of exactly how I'd recommend trimming a brisket, click right here. You're gonna get the advice of a true professional and somebody who's a very, very, very good pitmaster. So I'm gonna trim this up. I'm gonna season it with salt and pepper and some seasoned salt, and then we're gonna put it on. So let's get to it. One note, I do now recommend using a straight edge slicer for trimming. It just makes it a lot easier. Use whatever you want, but I found the best results using this slicer. That's what they do at Bar A. It's just really easy. You get nice even cuts. Just make sure it's nice and sharp and you're gonna have a great experience. But be careful, don't cut yourself. All right, now it's time to season it up. I recommend using whatever you want. There are a lot of great rubs out there. Like the Harry Sue rub is delicious. The Blues Hog stuff tastes really good. Meat Church stuff is good. Mo Cason, there's Cosmos Q. There's tons of seasonings out there. Find the one that you want and use that. What I found is that I prefer simplicity in terms of the seasoning. So salt and pepper, it gives me the salt that's necessary, and I like the pepper, and it's kind of contributing to it being a Texas style seasoning that we're putting on the outside because you need heavy black pepper for that. And then to round out all the flavors, Fiesta Season It All. This is not sponsored by Fiesta. I don't get a commission from Fiesta. I actually have no benefit. Actually, it'd probably be better for me if I told no one about this, but somebody told me about it, so I'm telling you. This is delicious. Caution, it has MSG, but it is relatively inexpensive. You can use it on basically everything. Seasoned salt in combination with the salt and pepper is what I would recommend. If you haven't tried it, you owe it to yourself to at least try it. Maybe save yourself some money, but it's a really, really nice flavor. There are some of the very best barbecue restaurants in Texas who are using exactly this. So do whatever you want. This is what I recommend. And I'm gonna go with the meat side first that I'm gonna season. Then I'm gonna season the fat side because the fat side is the presentation side of this brisket when we're done. This is just a little guy, not very big at all. We don't expect a long cook, but the principles are exactly the same whether you have a big brisket or a small brisket. So I'm gonna do salt and pepper on the meat side, then some of the season it all, and then repeat the process on the other side. Then we're ready to fire up the smoker. Now that we have this brisket trimmed and seasoned, it's time to fire up the pellet grill. This is the pellet grill we're going to be using. It was formerly known as the PG500. It was developed by Fast Eddie, who's a world championship barbecue competitor. They make this 100% in the United States. It is currently on the Mad Scientist Barbecue website, and it is now called the Automation. Why? Because it automates the process of running the fire for you. But this is my favorite pellet grill I've ever used, without any caveats or hesitations when it comes to that. The quality of food I can make on this beats anything else I've ever tried. So that's why I put it on the website. That's why I put my name on it. That's why I trust this. So we're gonna go through some of the features, but first let's get a lay of the land inside this pit. So first I took out this top rack, but it is available for you if you want it. Here we have our bottom rack, low and slow barbecue weather right there. And this is a top-down cooker, much like an offset, because we have the fire pot here, we have a break, and then all the heat is gonna come up and over just like an offset would. So we get those offset fat rendering cooking qualities that we really want in this pit. Now, caveat, if you have a pellet grill where you only have a bottom rack, I would go fat side down, because for most pellet grills, you're getting huge amounts of radiant heat from that diffuser or baffle plate, whatever you want to call it, below the grate. Now, if you have a top rack, I would go fat side up on the top rack. But for me, because this is a top-down cooker, the same way an offset is, I'm gonna put it fat side up right here. And this direct heat side, we have a big heavy grate here. You can use this to grill steaks or whatever you want. But I'm gonna take this out, and you're gonna see why very shortly. So I took out the direct heat grate, and now we're going to be using what makes this pellet cooker so cool. We have this tray that sits directly above the fire pot, and you can put in wood chunks, you can put in extra pellets, you can put in even whole splits. So what I'm using is a backyard offset sized split. So something I'd run in my offset cookers. You could go bigger, obviously. You see that there's plenty of room. And then you put this over the top, so the fire pot will light that split and provide near offset quality flavor to what you're cooking inside. Now, is it completely offset quality flavor? No, I'm not gonna pretend that it is. But it is frustratingly close. So that when you take a bite of food cooked on here, you're like, and that required almost no effort. Yeah, maybe it's not necessarily always worth it to slave away in front of a fire if you have a machine that can kind of do it for you. And what I've recommended to most of the people who ask me about what kind of smoker they should get is a pellet grill, because it's just way more convenient. For most people, a pellet grill is the right answer, because you can't afford to waste an entire day to cook your food. So we got that split in there. Now all you have to do is turn this thing on. We're gonna start nice and low, 200 degrees, because at the beginning of the cook, you want to maximize smoke flavor, because that's when meat absorbs the most smoke flavor. Now, I've done experiments, and I found that meat absorbs smoke flavor over the entire cook, but it's most prominent at the very beginning, probably the first 4 hours or so. So what we're going to do is the first 4 hours at 200 to 225, nice and smoky. We'll probably burn through this split and add one more, and you guys are going to be amazed at how dark this spark gets, how quickly, and the kind of smoke flavor that we're able to put on a pellet grill brisket. Now, if you don't have a grill like this, well, first let me say this. Obviously, this is for sale on the website. I would love to sell 1 million of these things, but it might not make sense for everybody. So you have multiple options. The one I recommend most highly is obviously this one. But if you want something that has the same kind of effect, where you are burning like wood chunks in order to increase the amount of smoke and bark that you get on the food that you're cooking, like the Camp Chef Woodwind Pro, it's a little finicky to use, but the quality of flavor you get is miles ahead of most pellet grills. Now, if that isn't an option, say you have a Rectech or a Traeger or a Pits and Spits or whatever it is, I'm not trying to cast shade on any of those pits, but maybe it's not an option for you to use the tray like on the Woodwind Pro, or to use something like this where you can put in a full split. There are other things that you can do in the beginning of the cook to dial up smoke flavor and bark. You can get a pellet tube or a pellet tray, or you can get a device that burns through wood chips. What's important here is, in the beginning, you want low temperature and smoky smoke. So as long as you do that, you should be getting good smoke flavor and good bark on your brisket. All right, so we're starting to light these pellets, and those pellets are going to be lighting that split we put in there. We put the top back over this because we don't want, a raging inferno from that split. We want slow, gentle, small flames, and that keeps everything controlled for us. Now that we are starting to get this thing lit, I'm gonna put this brisket on while this thing is heating up. Why? Because this is gonna get the maximum amount of smoke flavor, maximum amount of bark, and the maximum amount of smoke ring by going on cold. So this works in all kinds of smokers. If you want to do it with your pellet smoker, I think you'll probably get better results. But you guys can see we really got a fire going there now. And so I'm going to put this in and close this up. All right, brisket is on. We're gonna let that roll at 200 degrees for the first 2 hours, and then we're gonna go to 225 for hours 3 and 4. Hours 5 and 6, we're gonna go to 250. Hours 7 and 8, if necessary, we're gonna go to 275, and if it's still not ready to wrap, then we're gonna bump it up to 300. But that's the basic process. Now, one caveat is in a lot of pellet grills, those higher temperatures like 275 and 300 are likely to burn whatever you're trying to cook, depending on the amount of radiant heat. It's about knowing your pit. So caution there. Most pellet grills, I probably wouldn't go over 250 degrees or so. Now there's some, like if I'm cooking on the second rack of my pits and spits, I got no problem cooking at 315. Not a huge deal. But on most pellet grills with just a bottom rack, I probably wouldn't exceed 250. If you have a top-down cooker like this one, or you're on the second or third rack, then yeah, you can cook at those higher temperatures. But a lot of people run into issues when they hear someone like Aaron Franklin say, oh, I cook at 275, 285. And they try to recreate that on their pellet grill and they don't get the same results. So caution there. And the last thing before we come back at the 2-hour mark is we have to talk about pellets. All pellets are not created equal. Some pellets are definitely better than others. It's about finding the ones that you want. So I'm not gonna tell you, you must use this pellet or you must use this pellet, but I will tell you that a certain prominent brand just reached a settlement because of how they were making their pellets. I know that they have a patent for using wood oils to flavor pellets. I don't know what they do, but here is that settlement. If you guys want to go read about it, if you want to read their patents, I'll include that also. And so make decisions that are best for you. I don't think that that product is probably best for most people, but if you like it, if you prefer it, then by all means, use it. Now there's some very good pellets out there. Cooking pellets are really good. Knotty wood pellets are good, though they do give you some clinker in the fire pot. Bear Mountain pellets, I know a lot of people like those. Lumberjack pellets are good. There's kind of the big box retail level of pellets. Then there are good pellets. In that category, I'd put Bear Mountain or Lumberjack or things like that. And then you have your super premium cooking pellets, knotty wood, and then Fast Eddie actually makes a pellet. Those are my favorite pellet to use right now, but use what you like, try a few different ones, and the one that gives you the flavor and results that you are after is the right answer for you. As you guys can see, our split is lit right there. Small flames, gentle. This will increase the temperature, which means you're gonna be burning fewer pellets, but it provides so much in terms of smoke flavor and bark formation that it's just a great tool to have. Okay, we're gonna check back in about 2 hours when we bump this thing up to 225. At that point, we're gonna take a peek at the brisket. This thing recovers temperature really quickly, so I don't mind taking a peek. But we're probably gonna check it at the 2-hour mark just to see what kind of color and bark formation. At that point, we're probably gonna add another split. But we'll check back in 2 hours and make those decisions then. All right, guys, it's been 2 hours, and so we're gonna bump up this temperature to 225, which I just did. Let's take a look at this brisket. This thing comes back up to temperature quickly, so I'm not worried. And I like what I'm seeing. 2 hours in on a pellet cooker, that is not bad. Looks pretty good. All right, great color so far. We bumped the temp up to 225. I added another wood split. That's probably gonna be the last one that I add. And then we'll check back in with you in another 2 hours. Hopefully at that point, we have a really good idea of what the bark's gonna look like, and then we'll start taking some internal temps. All right, guys, we're here with the next update. We're planning to do this update at the 4-hour mark, but it's a little bit later than that. It's about 5 hours in at this point. But I want to show you where we are, and we're going to bump up the temperature to 250, and then probably in another hour to 2 hours, we're going to bump it to 275 until it's time to wrap. So I'm going to open these doors, I'm going to grab that brisket, and we're going to take a look. So we're 5 hours in, we're starting to get good bark, not bad. Probably another couple hours before we wrap. If we're looking at this thing, this fat is starting to get soft. You can see that the fat looks wet after I touch it because the fat is beginning to render. This fat is beginning to render. And if you want to see a final temperature, not a final temperature, if you want to get an idea of the current temperature, we'll go right here. We're at 167. So in the stall. Kind of what I expected for this time in the cook. But let's take it out. Put this thing back in, dial up the temperature to 250, and we're going to rock on. We used one wood split when we first started out, and then when we bumped up the temperature, we added a second wood split. So we've used 2 wood splits so far, no more wood splits at this point. We're just going to run this until it's ready to wrap. Everything's still soft. I'm not going to go crazy with the temp. This is all looking good. See the underside. Underside even looks good. All right. And I want to remind you guys that this has taken very little effort. I changed the temperature a couple times. I added 2 wood splits. You guys have seen I haven't done too much to this. It just kind of takes care of itself, which is why pellet grills are so fun. I went and got some food. I went and hit some golf balls. By the way, I'm really bad at golf. I want to know what you guys like to do while you're doing cooks, other than being eaten alive by bugs like I am right now. The next thing we got to do now is install our probe. This is the RFX wireless probe from ThermoWorks. If you guys know ThermoWorks, you know that they make great stuff. I've been using their stuff for years. One of the best purchases I ever made in my entire life. ThermoPen. And actually now they have the ThermoPen 1, which gives you a reading in under a second. These things are water resistant. I've spent more money on cheap thermometers that broke and I had to replace than I spent on ThermoPens because they just plain work. The ThermoPen 1 is the best product on the market, and the second best product is the old version, just the regular ThermoPen Mark IV. ThermoWorks makes awesome stuff. I've been using them for years. With the RFX wireless probe, you can get great readings even at longer distances and through bigger barriers than you can with competitive products. Why? Because they use a longer wavelength to transmit the data. So if you're like me and use a 1/4-inch thick offset smoker and you're worried that the wireless thermometer won't go through that, as I've tried with many other products, well, with the RFX, it's not an issue. And it's why I'm so grateful for ThermoWorks sponsoring today's video. They help me make content that hopefully helps you, and I think they just make the best products in the business. So to set this up, it's really easy. I just took this probe out of the package, and boom, it's right here in the app. It says it's 85 degrees out here. So setting this up, super easy. I already have this gateway connected to the Wi-Fi, so it doesn't matter if I'm in Timbuktu. If I have Wi-Fi service, I can know the temperature of this brisket inside the pit. Now, you can also use different colored bands that are going to be heat resistant. You can use white, green, red, blue, yellow, lots of different colors. Why? Because you want to be able to look at a piece of meat and know that the probe that you're looking at in the app, like this one, is the probe that you're looking at in person. So if you have a red band on this, you look red band, look in the app, oh, that's the one that's labeled with the red band. You know exactly which brisket is at what temperature. And this single gateway can actually pair to dozens of probes. So it doesn't matter how many pieces of meat you're cooking at one time, the RFX system can handle it. So if you're interested in an RFX wireless probe or a ThermoPen 1 or any of the products that they make, they're awesome. Click on the link in my description and go check it out. I use them for thermometry. I use them for measuring the humidity in my humidor, all that stuff. Great products all the time. If you're a buy once, cry once person, click on that link in the description. Check it out. It's going to improve your cooking. All right, so setting up the RFX wireless probe. Pull this out. It's going to be activated. I see it on the app. Really easy to figure that out. Then I check the signal for my gateway. So if I open up the app, right here you can see the signal for that is amazing. So I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to put this probe inside the brisket in the bottom of the flat. I'm trying to get kind of middle. So middle up and down, middle left and right, middle back and forth. And that's probably going to be about the lowest temperature in the whole brisket. So I'm going to put this in. I'm going to monitor from my app, and I don't have to come back. So anywhere I am, doesn't matter if I'm watching a movie or if I'm taking a nap, I pick up my phone, I can look and see what the temperature is. So, let's put it in. So, we'll meet you back when it's time to wrap. We'll give you updates on temperature, time, all that stuff. But now, there's nothing to do. So, we'll go back inside, enjoy the air conditioner, and I'll be checking the temp on the app. When it reaches probably something around 180 degrees Fahrenheit, we'll come back out here and wrap it. All right, guys, I think it's time to wrap. Let's pull this brisket out, take a look at it, and I'll explain why. So the first thing is we have really nice dark bark. That's one of the first things I want to check out. Also, we have good fat render. You guys see I can just poke right through the fat. Normally I wouldn't do that if this is, trying to be as pretty as possible. Also, the internal temp, according to our RFX probe, is 183.7, I believe. So basically 184 degrees, just what I'm looking for. And this thing has sweated out enough water. We've rendered the fat. We're at a proper temperature. It's shrunk down, so I know it sweated out enough water that's not going to make the wrap all soupy. This is a brisket ready to be wrapped. Now, one caveat. If you have a cooker where you're not getting this kind of bark at the 4 or 5 hour mark, and you need to do everything you can to get more bark, what I would advocate is the Goldie's method, where you take it all the way to finished, and then you wrap and rest it in aluminum foil and tallow. What I like to do, if I have great bark, is wrap it in butcher paper, because I'm not concerned about washing away the bark. I want everything to soften up just a little bit, but I don't want it to get soupy. I don't want it to get pot roasty. I don't want any of those things to happen. So this has all the characteristics that I'm looking for. It's got the right color, it's got the right bark, it's got the right temperature, it's got the right fat render, and it's got the right amount of water loss to really concentrate the flavor and make it exactly what I want. And now we're focusing on getting it tender after wrapping, which means we're going to approach a temperature of around 200, 205 degrees, something like that, where the collagen begins to break down. Collagen is a structural protein. So think of it as providing structure, being tough, and being flexible. So it's not like bone where it can't flex. Collagen is flexible and structural. So for what that means to you, it's gonna chew like rubber. So until we break that down, it's not gonna be tender. And you can think of collagen as like a long chain. And what you're doing by cooking at these high temperatures is cutting those links in the chain so that they no longer provide structure. They no longer do the job that they were doing formerly. So that's what we're looking for. I'm gonna wrap this up with a little bit of tallow. If you want to, you can take some of the tallow, put it in a tray, and put it on the smoker alongside the brisket if you want to smoke the tallow, if you want even more smoke flavor. So that's a really helpful option. Not necessary, but I think it does help. So getting ready to wrap this thing up, first thing I'm gonna do is remove this. I'll put it back in just a minute, and then we're gonna get some tallow. So you can put this on above or below, whatever you want. Not super important. I want to get this guy right back here. Starting to look really nice like this. So, fat side up, roll it over once. Bring in the sides. So it started off fat side up, and now it's fat side down. We want to keep that in mind. We want to end fat side up. Remember, that's the presentation side. We don't want it sitting in a bunch of liquid and losing that bark that we worked really hard to create. Actually, we didn't work very hard. But that bark that we really, really want is pretty easy to create on this thing. But fat side down, we want to end fat side up. So fold in this side. And you want this to be nice and tight if you're going to use paper. Fat side up, fat side down, and then one more, fat side up. And what I like to do is squish in the ends as much as possible and the sides, because I want it to be as tight as possible, because this wicks out moisture. And as it wicks out moisture, it's going to slow the cooking process. That's why wrapping in butcher paper is slower than wrapping in foil. So we want to minimize that. We want a little bit of it. We just don't want too much, and we don't want the cook to take forever. So I'm going to put this back in, and this is the insertion line, so make sure you get it in that far, this little line. So I'm going to make sure I do that. Go all the way in. And we put it back in. And I'm not really worried about this. They're super robust. You can put them in, like an Instant Pot or a pressure cooker or, anything. So being in a smoker, not that big of a deal. So we're going to continue monitoring the temperature. What I want is I want that flat to be 208-ish. It might be 205, it might be 210, but something in that neighborhood, somewhere between those two numbers, between 205 and 210. If it's at 200, it's probably still going to be tough. The point, I want to be at about 200. It's very easy to overcook a point, but 200 for the point, 208 for the flat, that's what I'm looking for. And I've put it so that the flat is closer to the heat source so that that comes up in temperature and ends up at a higher temperature than the point, which is currently a few degrees ahead. So a couple principles I like to maintain in whatever cook I'm doing. Fat always toward the heat source. In this case, since it's a top-down cooker, fat is up. On a lot of pellet grills, it'll be down though, so don't make that mistake. Then the second thing is I want that point to finish at a lower temperature than the flat. So a lot of times people think 203 and they want 203 everywhere. I'm afraid that doesn't give you probably the results that you want. After you've done it 100 times in the same smoker and you know if you measure the temperature at one place, you can extrapolate what other temperatures are, then yeah, maybe you can do that. But in my experience, in my cookers with the briskets that I've had, it tells me that, well, the flat needs to be at a higher temp than the point if you want both to have the texture that you're after. So at this point, we're going to take it to those temperatures. We're going to pull it out, let it cool to 155. We're just going to pull it out of the smoker, let it cool at room temperature, and then we're going to place it in a warming oven at 145 degrees. It's going to rest for about 12 hours, and we'll check in with you tomorrow to see how it turned out. All right, guys, it's the next day. Our brisket is in the warmer right now, staying nice and hot for when we slice it. But I'm going to fill you in on what happened. So we took, not that it's anything bad. I made that sound bad. I don't know why I did that. But we took it to tenderness. And so in the flat, we were looking at 208. In the point, it was 201. Those are about the numbers that I'm looking for, but the probe felt good when it went in. So I was getting very little resistance. One of the great things about having a probe like this is you can feel, like with tactile sensation, how firm the meat still is or whether it's achieved tenderness. Now, the temperature is going to be your fail-safe. Like if you stick to a reasonable temperature, you're going to have good results. But to really hone in on the very best quality results, you're going to want to be so familiar with cooking briskets that you know what it feels like. Now, I can't show you that through video. If you come to a class or something like that, then you can feel exactly what I'm talking about. You can see, smell, touch, taste, all that stuff. But here, I'm going to give you the guardrail so you don't make a mistake. But the best thing you can possibly do to improve your barbecue skills is cook more. It's that way with anything. If you want to get great at a sport, you play it more. If you want to get very well versed on anything, you do it more often and you become an expert by virtue of your experience. So what I'm trying to do for you guys is shortcut that experience so you can get good results from the beginning, and then you have the rest of your life to dial in exactly the flavor profile you like, exactly the tenderness you like, exactly the way you like it trimmed, all that stuff. So we got it to tenderness, and then we got it out and let it rest on the counter, I think until it hit about 160. At that point, we put it in the warmer. We can put it on the screen here for you so you can see the curve. We let it go down to 160, and then we put it in the warming drawer, which is one of the cool features about this automation right behind me. So let me get this brisket. Let's get it out of the wrap. And then, if there's any left over, as you know, it's the next day, and we let this brisket sit in the warmer for an extended period of time. You may think, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of electricity, why would you do that? It may be counterintuitive to you, but let me tell you, an extended heated rest at something like 145 degrees makes an enormous difference in the quality of barbecue that you're making. If you go to the top restaurants in Texas and you're thinking, I wonder why my stuff isn't turning out this way, one of the reasons is that those places are leaving their food in the warmer for an extended period of time, especially things like brisket, those big cuts. Whether it's 8, 12, 16 hours, it's an extended rest, and it makes a big difference in terms of tenderness. So do not neglect that. With the automation, it's got the warming drawer built in. That's easy. If you don't have that, you can use a cooler, but you want to keep that brisket in that range of maybe between 140 to 160. Higher than that, and the meat starts to lose its integrity. Too low, and you risk the meat being in the danger zone and, growing some kind of bacterium. I don't know. But an extended rest makes a big difference. Time to cut into this and see how we did. All right, I'm gonna start right down the middle here. Shout out to my guy, Masa, for sending me this knife. This is the first time I'll ever have used it. It looks sweet. Extra superior guaranteed. I'll be the judge of that. So you guys can see here, We have the point, which sits on top. You can see where it's moving there. It ends about right here. And then the flat is underneath. And we're going to separate this, not completely along that line, but somewhere close, about right here. So we have two sides of the brisket. Wow, this knife is good. Not bad, not bad. All right, you guys can see that the fat has yellowed right here, which is a result of that top side heat. I should have trimmed this a little bit more, but this isn't going to be bad because it's going to disintegrate when you take a bite and it's going to make everything seem juicy. So that is a great sign. All right, it's time to taste, and I will give you my honest opinion on how this tastes, and I'll give you where this lands in the spectrum, from the very best in the world to the very worst. I'll give you some hopefully helpful comparisons so you can kind of know about what flavor we're talking about and the texture we're talking about. Let's slice. This knife is great. I'm going to turn this top portion into some burnt ends. Notice that we haven't lost the texture there. It's not mushy, which is what we were wanting to avoid. That's why we keep it at 200. So I press on this. It's not mushy, but you can see still super crazy juicy. What I like to do here is separate this pretty close to the line there. And so here we have extra barky, extra juicy burnt ends. So to me, this is very good. Definitely tender. I could squish this in half if I wanted to. Maintains its structural integrity. The fat on top is yellow and well rendered. I could have trimmed it a little bit more. That's my fault, not the fault of the process. But I'm going to try this. The Rolls Royce of barbecue. If it's on a pellet grill, maybe it's like the Cadillac. No offense to GM. That is disappointingly good.
We have one.
Right? It's legitimately extremely good.
It's so good.
Alright. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. If you cook with an offset, you're going to get a little bit more flavor, but not drastically so. The ability to burn wood splits or wood chunks like in a Woodwind Pro or something like that changes the game. But if you don't have a pellet grill like that, don't worry, the same principles apply. In the beginning, low temperature, extra smoky. You can use a pellet tube, you can use a pellet tray, you can use something that burns wood chips. But right then is where you got to infuse that smoke flavor. In the beginning, that's where it matters. If this were a boxing match, it'd be like punching to the body at the beginning of the fight because it'll pay dividends in the end. Same thing with smoke flavor. We add smoke flavor at the beginning because it's going to show up in the end. And wow, I'm legitimately surprised at how good that is. That's probably the best pellet grill brisket I've ever personally eaten. And you guys saw we kept it super simple. Salt, pepper, seasoned salt, just following the right principles. Tenderness is exactly the way I want it. The flavor is remarkably good. And you guys may think I'm lying, but if I went to a barbecue restaurant and they had some 1,000-gallon offset smokers parked out back, and I went in and I had that bite of barbecue, I would say, checks out. It's legitimately that good. The flavor while you're chewing it, it's really, really, really good. But as it lingers, it dissipates quickly. Can you get more smoke flavor? Can you get better smoke flavor, like a deeper and richer smoke flavor with offset smokers? Yes. Otherwise, nobody would bother with them because they're a lot more work. Now, I just love to run them because it's enjoyable. I get to be totally involved. But if you are a normal person with a real job and a real family that requires your time, pellet grills probably make sense. All right, see, fat's a little thick here, but you can see it's yellowed and started to really render well. This decal fat has rendered out really well, and you guys can see here that this isn't grainy. It's not overcooked. It's not going to be like chewing sand. So this is exactly what I want to see from the point. I'm going to do the pull test on the point. So it's not falling. Let's see. Yeah. Let me do some slicing here on the flat. That was just a bad slice. That's on me. All right. Here we have a slice of flat. It looks really good. If we squeeze, you can see it's not dry at all. The fat on top is rendered well. I would go back for another burn end, but Erica ate them all, and I am not joking. Not falling under its own weight, but small tug, and well, that one just gave way right there. So this is exactly what we want to see. Now I gotta taste the flat. I want a piece with the fat in it still. All right. Oh. Man. Wow. I have worked really hard on briskets in the past that weren't this good. And this is, I put a split in at the beginning. I put a split in like a couple hours later. I changed the temperature a couple times, and that's it. Wow, it's even got a warmer built in. So that's the process. If you guys have more questions about this, feel free to go over to Patreon. We have lots of people on there with tons of experience, every kind of cooker you can imagine from every manufacturer. So if you have questions, those guys over there and gals are super helpful. And you can say crazy things sometimes like, has anybody ever cooked meerkat? And some guy's going to be like, oh, I'm from South Africa. I cooked meerkat 3 times. This is how I did it. It's pretty awesome. But this is the process. Slice it. If you want to know exactly how I recommend slicing a brisket, I'll put a card right here. You can go to that video. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful to you because I didn't have a coach walking me through learning the barbecue methods that I eventually arrived at. But I'm hoping that this gives you information to make whatever decision you want. You don't have to do it the way I do. I found this to work best for me, and I'm hoping it's going to help you guys out. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That helps me out. You can also follow me on all other social media at Mad Scientist Barbecue. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.